Wow, another great episode. Although I'm surprised that this one has not trended as long as the first one. That one trended for 2 whole days in the top 10 in the United States, and this one didn't last the first half of the day. Very weird, especially since it has an incredible final performance by Chadwick Boseman as T'Challa. Maybe it'll pick up again in the evening. I wonder, still, I think animation has a ways to go, sadly, when it comes to connecting with the mainstream. I think it's making progress, but I would have thought this would have trended more, and I would have thought the Star Wars Visions trailer would have gotten a little more attention. That trended for a little bit as well, but I'm just not seeing the same level of interest as with the live action stuff, which again is a shame because this stuff is phenomenal. All right, so we're going to break down today's episode, which has a lot of similarities to the first one, but yet also feels very different because it really captures the feeling of Wakanda and Guardians of the Galaxy. It's maybe, it's more Guardians of the Galaxy than Wakanda, so maybe that's having a little bit of an effect. But Chadwick Boseman is so good in this episode. We're going to talk about him, obviously. But I first want to point out the similarities between this episode and the first, and that's they both have the Disney animated versions of the characters. Everyone's got these rosy cheeks, big eyes, everyone looks fantastic. Really strong use of light once again. Yeah, I'd say it is through the episode. It's not always a natural source of light or a light bulb. Here it's a lot of technological light, and it's used incredibly well. And also they're able to cram an incredible amount of story into under 30 minutes. Once again, it feels longer than the actual running time in a good way. All right, so let's take a look at the cast. Boy, they have almost everyone here. And so the fact that they didn't invite back Dave Bautista to voice Drax, and didn't I tell you that guy was good? Fred Tatsgior did an amazing job as Drax. I would swear it was Dave Bautista. And then also, they didn't bring back Chris Pratt for Peter Quill. He even has a totally different look. This one looks like Sean William Scott, which I think is a really interesting choice. I wonder if Peter Quill and Ego will come back. Kurt Russell even came back. Will come back. Well, the characters here will come back in a later episode because it's all going to start to come together towards the end of the season. I thought that the end credit scene was phenomenal and so perfect. But yeah, they have everyone. They even go back the actress who did Karina. So so to have some of the actors not come back is really odd. So it's really just Dave Bautista, Chris Pratt, and also interestingly the actor who did Corvus Glaive. But everybody else, even Carrie Coon is Proxima Midnight, who'd be like, oh, she sounds different. I'm out of here. So crazy to me, just absolutely crazy. Even Sean Gunn came back and did Kraglin, and I thought that was the one character where the animation didn't do the character justice because Sean Gunn's a lot more expressive than the character that they did there. But everybody else, I thought the standouts besides obviously Chadwick Boseman, and I'd be curious to who you think did a particularly good job, but I thought that Karen Gillan was phenomenal as Nebula. We'll talk about some of their redesigns too in a moment. But also Benicio Del Toro. I've never seen or heard him, I guess in this case, so alive. It was, I think, one of his best performances. I wish he'd been that good in the movie when he made his live action appearance. I'm like, let's bring back the Collector. I think there's obviously a lot of potential with this character. Oh, it was just incredible. But before we talk a little bit about the redesigns and some of the characters, I want to talk about the message of the episode and the feels of Chadwick Boseman's final performance. Although he's going to show up in a little, his final performance in this season. So the message here was that T'Challa he just radiates good as a person and as a leader. Like the dialogue, Matthew Chauncey actually is the writer of this. It's the same director as the first episode, but Matthew Chauncey took over writing, and I'm going to be quoting him throughout because his script, because it's incredible. And kudos, of course, to the actors for delivering the line so well. But T'Challa in this episode says sometimes the best weapon in your arsenal is just a good argument. I wish more people felt that way, and I wish more people were open to good arguments. This is, after all, a fantasy. I don't know if that would work in real life. But just an absolutely incredible person. And Chadwick Boseman's performance as the character really is able to make that, to drive that home. You know, it can't just be on the page. Someone has to make you feel that a good argument could win the day, and Chadwick Boseman does that. And it's interesting. I'm going to review the War for Wakanda DLC later this week. I watched it last night, and they have a different actor doing T'Challa, and a different team of writers. And to me, it wasn't T'Challa. I had some issues with that. I mean, it was fine, but it wasn't as special. So I think that I think that they're making the right choice. I don't think that Chadwick Boseman is replaceable, to be honest with you. I think that his performance as the character and his Chadwick Boseman as T'Challa should be left in a time capsule as a very special moment. I think I think it would dilute the specialness of what was accomplished there. And then also I thought it was very interesting that what myth is he following? The story of Robin Hood. They could have gone with an African story. Africa has a rich history of mythology and its own tales. But the fact that they chose Robin Hood, I think, was intentional, and it speaks to the global appeal of Chadwick Boseman's T'Challa, and also the global and now universal, as we see in this episode, in this timeline, the scope of what his mindset is. You know, Wakanda, of course, has his heart, which is so touchingly shown in this episode, but he's someone who also cares very much about the world at large. And I feel in some ways the character very much echoes Barack Obama as well. Another really standout individual. So I think it's just phenomenal. I think this is another wonderful way to remember not only the T'Challa character as played by Chadwick Boseman, but Chadwick Boseman himself. And also the elegance of the character, when he does that fight against Korath. I thought that, he has some great moments here. And he's a very different, in the War for Wakanda, they made him more like an athlete, more like a big football player or something like that, or a wrestler. And here he has, Chadwick Boseman had a slimmer build, and so they have that elegance. He has a little Indiana Jones quality here. It's just really great. Oh, it's fantastic. All right, so let's talk about some of the Guardians of the Galaxy makeovers. Oh, they're so good. So I was genuinely surprised, and I hope no one ruined it for you, that Thanos was a part of the team. And I thought the genocide running gag, like it's still genocide, sounds like genocide to me, and the fact that he wouldn't give up on it, although, of course, T'Challa had talked him out of actually doing it. I thought that was really clever. And Josh Brolin coming back, I mean, that just sold it. I thought it was phenomenal. And when we go through the episode, you'll see I thought that the storyline between him and his adopted daughter Nebula was handled really beautifully, considering we know how things went for them much worse in the timeline that we know. But Nebula, wow, what a reimagining of a character. And she's so unhappy in our world. To see her thriving here made me just really feel great. And she looked phenomenal. They turned her into a film noir character, and Karen Gillan knocked those lines out of the park. It's hard to say film noir lines, especially in modern settings and futuristic settings, and not seem like you're trying too hard. But she just, it's gorgeous. She went like very Lauren Bacall. The whisper voice that Lauren Bacall has a different voice, but you know what I'm saying. Karen Gillan gave Nebula like this whisper, husky voice, and that works very well as a film noir character. And I wonder if that's one of the reasons they made the choice for her. But I'm going to knock on their front door like a lady. Oh, wow. And so that's the name of this tune. And I love that she calls T'Challa here Cha-Cha. I thought they were a really nice couple. I ship it. I like it. The Collector, that Disney and Marvel decided to have such a fabulously flamboyant villain who was just so delicious, and that Benicio Del Toro was unleashed by being able to portray that. I just fell in love with it. And that six-pack, I'd be like, hey, can Benicio, if we give you a trainer, can you maybe accomplish that? I thought this, I never really got the Collector. He's got a ride in Disneyland. I was like, But here I'm like, this is a fabulous character. Oh my God, it was just so great. A lot of great lines that we're going to go over. And then I have to give a shout out to Djimon Hounsou, who I never knew was so funny. He always plays such serious characters. He's hilarious. Classic Star-Lord is a line that's really stuck in my head. I think I even accidentally referenced it the other day and forgot that you wouldn't know what I was referencing. because you haven't seen this episode yet. But, oh, I loved it. And he just did it. And the animation on that character, on Korath, the facial expressions were just fantastic. All right, so let's go through this. And of course, as always, be sure to share your own thoughts down below. I'd love to hear what some of your favorite lines are from today's episode. So incredibly well written. All right, so we start off with the classic scene from the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie. Although he ain't dancing, T'Challa is a man with purpose. And, this goes very easily. And we see him, take the same, Infinity Stone, which we eventually, of course, learned it to be, to liberate it, right? And then they do, the right away, it's the twist on the very, at this point, iconic interaction from the first movie where, and there, Korath has never heard of Star-Lord. But here, T'Challa doesn't even need to say it. Even just seeing him, Korath totally knows who he is. And he totally fans out. And this was just, I thought this sequence was incredible. Even T'Challa thought it was charming because, at first, and he's like, oh, I feel like I should be bowing to you. And that was a great reference, of course, to the fact that, T'Challa is a king of Wakanda. So he has just a regalness about him that, people can even see even when he is a Robin Hood type character, because he's not a criminal. So I just thought this stuff was great. And, Korath is like, hey, are you hiring? Maybe I don't have to give Ronan what he wants. And T'Challa's like, no, sorry, we're full up. But, Korath is so great, of course, T'Challa changes his mind. But first they spar a little bit. And this is, where, as I said, the elegance came in. And he easily, T'Challa can do a lot with very little. And so that's why he doesn't even have to raise a fist here to take Korath out. And he's like, classic Star-Lord. And I just loved it. And he faints with a smile on his face. And how can T'Challa leave him behind like that? He's like, I've hired worse. And I was like, what a great guy. So this stuff was great. He comes out, and I love that Michael Rooker came back as Yondu. I cried at Yondu's funeral in the second film, so I really love that character. So I thought it was great, and we see them, and he says, he points out usually they would be criminals, but T'Challa has turned them into heroes. And, it's funny, in the first episode, I didn't see the Watcher watching anything. But he's in 2 shots here, actually, as he narrates, being like, here I am. I guess because they're in space. They're flying right by him. And I thought that this flashback was really great for the dialogue. The line here, where his father, T'Chaka, says, you have the blood of a king running through your veins, but it's pumped by the heart of an adventurer. I was like, oh my God, chef's kiss, so poetic. Who wrote this? And then I was like, it's Matthew Chauncey, he's a genius. And I just thought that was fabulous. And also, very Disney Palace in the throne room of Wakanda here. It looks very Disney Palace-y. I love it. And I don't know why he was chucking a spear for fun, but he was, and he goes outside the force field, and there's the Watcher being like, hey. But he doesn't interfere and say, hey, you might want to go back in. And who do the Ravagers take? But they take this kid. And I love that Yondu was like, does this look like Peter Quill to you? And they're like, all Earthlings look the same. And I thought they came up with, also the joke that in this universe, Yondu outsourced the job instead of doing it himself. And I thought they came up with a pretty good reason that the meteorite vibranium comes from gave off, this otherworldly radiation. So they thought that was the spawn of ego. What else could be giving off those readings? So I thought that made sense. It didn't make any sense to me that T'Challa wasn't like, take me home right now. But I think he's such a happy child. But they end up dealing with that. But when I was watching it, I was like, why doesn't he say, okay, well, this was fun, but could you take me home immediately? So, but I guess the universe beckoned, and it's a pretty impressive calling card right there. So you go to present day, and they're in the club, and I'm like, that looks like fun. And I just love the camaraderie of the group, and I love that Korath just like really settled in right away. He's like getting along with everybody, making fun of Thanos. And then the Drax interaction, which was actually also very touching. This was a very funny episode, but really got me in the feels several times. And this was one of them, because they have this is some of the best Drax humor I've ever seen. When Drax like, your money's no good here. And T'Challa thinks because he's a celebrity, but instead he's like, no, we only take cash. It's so great. And then he's like, oh, you're the one who liberated my planet, which of course, in our multiverse, the main one, Thanos destroyed. And that's what set Drax on his path of revenge. But he's like, And T'Challa says, all in a day's work. And Drax says, no, it took several days. And then he says, I must take our picture to show to my wife and daughter. And wow, of course, in the comics and in the original Guardians of the Galaxy movie, his wife and daughter were killed by Thanos. And again, that's part of why he wants his revenge. So look how happy he is bartending. And again, talk about classic characters. Classic Drax. He's like, oh, you look awful. We must retake this picture. But then, Nebula shows up, and look at the look that Cha-Cha gives her. I just thought that was great. I was like, I feel the love. She's just fantastic. And so they're having their conversation here, and they get, really good job with the exposition here. He says, you should really get along more with your father. He gardens now, which of course is a reference to him becoming a gardener after he'd accomplished his goals in our timeline. And then also the lie about Wakanda. We find out, because I think they realized we were all thinking that T'Challa thinks that his Wakanda was destroyed by yet another senseless war of the humans. I'd be like, even I would want to see it. I'd be like, maybe, were there any survivors? I'd like to go and check. My family was pretty resourceful. So anyway, also, so she tells him, I have an opportunity for us. And so then we go into Heist Nebula, who looks just as fabulous. And it's the embers of Genesis, or as I like to call it, poison ivy. Basically, whenever I see plant life being controlled and growing out of control, I think of poison ivy. So I'm like, it's basically poison ivy. So I love that Korath was like, this is your daughter? And she's like, adopted. I thought that was great. And they're still not totally getting along, but there's hope. And I love that T'Challa said, I'm trying to get them into counseling. He's like, the hits just keep on coming with this script. It's so good. And then we find out they have Black Order security. And I was like, I did not expect the Black Order to also show up. I was so delightfully surprised. But Yondu doesn't want to do it because he's like, the Collector's bad news. And we find out the Collector has taken over for Thanos once he went straight. Once he decided to be a good guy, the Collector is now the big bad of the galaxy. So look at that use of light. Oh, wow. This is where we hear about the Robin Hood reference. And Yondu says, I just can't say no to you. So I was like, so technically, T'Challa is the heart and the captain of the ship if you have absolutely no say of your own. So I thought this look at Nowhere was nice, particularly because when we see the makeover of Nowhere at the very end of the episode. So we go to Nowhere, very delightfully named, very nice, from the comics. And so they do the classic, we're going to talk about the heist while we actually see the heist happen to save us time. Great writing tool, used very well here. And there's Corey Kuhn with one of her few lines as Proxima Midnight. Yondu's flirting it up with her, saying, I see they have one of the exhibits running the museum. And they cause a distraction outside. And I thought this was also hilarious because he says, call me Captain Genocide again. So he's going to actually beat him up a little bit. And of course, the Black Order falls for it while T'Challa gets loose in the lab. And I thought, I've never seen Star-Lord be so competent. It was just really incredible what T'Challa was able to do with his tech. So he goes in search, and you can just see how big the Collector's collection is, which T'Challa even remarks on. So then we see the Collector and all his fabulousness. Oh, and look, what a pair! Oh, I love it. Whose nose can go higher? Oh, they're just both so. This is just great. Am I watching Bravo? It's that fabulous. And then also, I thought this was a great line too, when the Collector says, I'm old enough to remember when the Ravagers were fun, And then Yondu's like, I went straight, now I'm a square. And I'm like, oh, I love this stuff. So he's looking around, T'Challa's looking around while they talk. And he sees the space dog, which is great, because that's going to be called back later. I think that might be one of the dogs from Russia. It's not Laika. It's not illustrated in that way, so I wonder who it's supposed to be. But then, that's Malekith. And so in this universe, he didn't die, but is in the Collector's collection. And I wasn't sure if it was that Dark Elf. Is it the Dark Elf? But later on, the Collector, when he's showing off his weapons collection, it is the leader of the Dark Elf's blade. So there he is. And then he finds Howard the Duck, voiced by Seth Green, voice actor extraordinaire, Robot Chicken, Family Guy. I've never been a Howard the Duck fan, but I thought they used him really well here. So he's like, hey, where are the embers of Genesis? And so he gives him crazy Howard the Duck style directions. And see, this is what's so great about T'Challa. T'Challa always sees the simplest path as the best one forward if possible. So he just shoots him loose and he goes, and this was a great line too, he says, give me the tour. Oh, it's so great. So meanwhile, outside, Proxima Midnight makes, short order. The Black Order makes short order of this little ruckus, and she realizes since it's the Ravagers, it's a distraction. And the jig is up. Or is it, as we find out? Oh, that's another great shot. So they're closing the gates, but Howard the Duck needs a drink, so this is where we part ways. And I thought that was enough Howard Duck, quite frankly. How did you feel? So I love that T'Challa does an Indiana Jones slide under the door as it closes. I was like, nice. So where does he run? Into the spaceship area, when that's a Nova Corps ship, by the way. And I thought this was so well done. He just happens to run by us to a ship that has been captured from Wakanda, and his necklace lights up. And this was also very sad. So there's the ship, and I have to say the Collector runs a very nice museum. So there's the placard, and he goes in, and the music was used so well here. I felt Wakanda in my bones. It was fantastic. And then I thought this was so sad to see these mannequins wearing the uniforms of the Dora Milaje, because what happened to the women who were wearing them? Oh, that's so sad. That's so sad. I wonder why you didn't go to look and see if they were in any of the cases inside. Oh, that's sad. So I thought that was very moving. So, and luckily it was not Okoye, because she shows up at the party at the end. So he looks around and he sees this is a Wakandan ship, and there's a message from his father, who, as you can see, has gotten much older. So this was actually recent. They could have been in there, man. They could have been in there. So anyway, he says, we're looking for you. And apparently his kingdom has not been destroyed. So he's a little upset. But no time to be angry. Well, this is interesting, because it looks like Nebula has betrayed him. And she's like, sorry, Cha-Cha. And he's pretty upset. But he's actually not looking at her. He's looking at Yondu, as we find out when they put them in the prison. And he's like, what the heck, you lied to me. And I loved when Taserface was like, is this like group stuff, or is this mission stuff or family stuff? And he was like, family stuff. I thought that was funny. And Yondu says, I saved you. You wanted to explore the world, and I wanted to make sure that you could. And he says, because it's a good callback, T'Challa has a momentary lapse of anger, and so he says, you are never my family. And he hurts their feelings, and T'Challa doesn't do that kind of stuff. So don't worry, he makes it up to them at the end. But that's how upset he is. T'Challa slightly hurt their feelings. This is usually just absolutely perfect. All right, so let's see here. So Corvus Glaive was like, the Collector wants to see you. So he wakes up and he's in a box. What's in the box? T'Challa's in the box. And again, great lines here. Great lines. The Collector says, I simply abhor drama. And then T'Challa says, your outfit would suggest otherwise. Zing! How long have you been sitting on that one? Or are you that good at improv, T'Challa? So, but then he has a serious moment. And he says, history, where I come from, history has never looked kindly on those who lock men in cages. And, he's speaking from the heart, but Karina hears that, and that's going to really help him in just a moment. She's like, I'm in a cage, not literally, but emotionally, and, I can't leave. So anyway, Nebula goes to visit everyone else down in the hold, and I thought it was funny that Korath was like, well, I hate you, you're the worst. And then she turns around and shoots Corvus Glaive, and she's like, I'm with you. And I love that Korath said, well, there's always two sides to every story, and it's a triple cross. And I love it. He's like, classic Star-Lord. And she said, this was all a distraction of a distraction, so that I could get the embers of Genesis, which she reveals. And what's T'Challa's escape plan? The vibranium necklace around his neck, which of course allows him to break free. But Ebony Maw is a formidable opponent, as we all remember from Infinity War. But luckily, T'Challa's words moved Karina, and she takes out Maw, and he's free. And they had some great shots of him running through the collection. And he's stopped by, I guess Osul wearing a glove. The Collector says, I'll do it myself. Oh, I wonder if that's an intentional callback to a gauntlet. But this gauntlet, instead of it being the Infinity Gauntlet, he says he hacked it off the carcass of a terribly chatty Cronin, which of course is supposed to be Korg. Oh, so funny and sad. So they're fighting, and the boxes move. They're, of course, as we know, levitating, but they move to give them a little bit of room to dance here. So I thought that was really, really great visual. And he's like, look at my weapons collection. And I was like, that Captain America shield shows up everywhere. So it looks like he has Mjolnir. He's got everything in this universe. So, but he settles on the Necro swords and Hela's hat. And boy, he really knows how to wear it. I was like, this is incredible. So he's throwing Necro swords after T'Challa, and he gets him. Now, meanwhile, outside, they're trying to escape, but the Black Order, being the Black Order, of course, are very difficult to deal with. And so Thanos says to his daughter, run, I'll stop them. And she's like, what are you, crazy? You could never do that. And he goes, not crazy, mad. And I thought that was such an incredible callback to, of course, his moniker in the comics is the Mad Titan. I was like, very well done, script. Very well done. So he takes them on. And he's doing pretty good against the red shirts, but he screams when he's attacked because he ends up having both two members, Proxima Midnight, and I forget the name of the one who can't talk, but they're double teaming him. So his scream gives Nebula pause. Oh, it looks like, so I thought this was amazing. So anyway, back here, T'Challa, finally Yondu's on time when he says a Ravager is never truly alone, and he knocks off the hat and breaks it. I don't know why it was so fragile at this point. I guess that's a powerful weapon, but not so powerful that the Collector doesn't break it. So we're like, uh-oh. So back to Thanos, it's not looking good for him, and I thought this was I thought he was maybe going to die, the way they pulled back, because people died in the first episode, and the way with each hit of that guy's weapon, the camera pulled out more and more, and I was like, is this it? Is this it for Thanos? But no, Nebula came back for him. Again, great use of light. And she takes out Proxima Midnight with just a blaster. That's some shooting techs. And this guy's too slow. Too slow. Why pause? Because she gives him enough time. And, way to take care of yourself, Nebula. She throws just a few of the embers of Genesis. Just a few, just a smidge, just a pinch, right in his mouth. And he explodes with plants. And I thought that was pretty neat. So look at that. I love that shot that they're together and he's holding her there. Considering all the pain that they go through in the main movies, to see a reality or a timeline where they are close, I thought was really touching. So they make it, they get into the ship, they just make it and they escape. So we just have to get T'Challa and Yondu out of here. And so they decide on the sticky fingers play. And I thought it was funny. He's like, who's the glue? And T'Challa says, you are, because you lied to me. So I was like, okay. So he goes and takes a bunch of hits to distract the Collector. But meanwhile, T'Challa gets ready to play his card. And I love that when he gets ready, we hear the music come in again. I was like, oh, again. Göransson deserved that Oscar for the score. And we see that Yondu took the Collector's bracelet when he was hitting him. And I'm surprised he was able to get it off so easy. You think that thing would be locked on there pretty hard. So he does a great shot. He pushes him into now he becomes one of his own exhibits. And I thought that was fantastic. He's like, give me back. So they give the bracelet to Karina, and he's like, give me my bracelet back, Karina. But she has her own plans for it. She lets everyone free. And I thought that his last line of karma, he used that line a little earlier in the script as well, was not only a great callback, but just perfect. Instead of a swear word, karma became a swear word in this moment. It was fantastic. So they escape off. Look, it looks just like Poison Ivy stuff. So they get off the planet, and look, they gave Nowhere some hair. He's like a chia pet, a chia pet out in space. And they fly off, and they're in the Wakandan ship, and they took the dog with them. Of course they did. That's so fantastic. And I love that T'Challa is already right at home in his native ship. And they have a really nice conversation. And I thought this was great, where Yondu said, I've seen you go all over the galaxy, and you fit in wherever you go. So the question of where you should be is, where does your heart tell you? And I thought it was incredible the way they zoomed in on Africa, that if anywhere he could be in the whole universe, he wanted to be in Africa. And I think that's what's so special about the Black Panther universe overall in the movies, and I think for many people in the real world. I just thought that was really phenomenal. Just so great. So he lands in Africa. Oh my God, it looks fantastic. Look at the use of light. Look at the use of light. I feel like your film school teacher. Reminds me of when I was in film school. So anyway, we see the Dora Milaje lined up there, and there he's home. There's Shuri, there's his mom, but they didn't want to pay for either of them to speak. So just his dad does, who of course is John Connie from the movies. And he's like, I knew you were out there. And I thought it was nice that T'Challa here says, this is the family that I made along the way. So he has two families, and he makes up with his space friends. And I thought, but so anyway, my two dads, so they say hi to each other. But before that gets settled, we have our space party. And again, here's Okoye saying, it sounds like genocide to me. And Thanos just won't give up on it. And he's embarrassing Nebula, which is great. Classic dad behavior. And then I love that Korath is like, I don't want to put a label on it, but if you did, I'm T'Challa's, Star-Lord's best friend. I thought that was great. And then here he's like, his father, T'Chaka, is like, how did you get on their ship? And I thought it was really an interesting choice that T'Challa decided to just say that Yondu rescued him. I mean, it's pretty egregious what he did, actually. He kidnapped their son. So, I guess, that's interesting. I have to be fair. I had some pretty harsh words for romanticizing being captured for Harley Quinn in the Suicide Squad. And so I think that, I guess because Yondu is a good guy, we know from the movies, I felt it was less egregious. But deep down, I don't think that there's any circumstances under which kidnapping has a good result. He didn't find him. He lied to him. He kept him from his family for 20 years. It's pretty bad. It is pretty bad. I think maybe there should be some ramification for that. I have to be fair about it. But I guess because we know Yondu deep down is a good guy, it seems it's bad. All right, so anyway, but I still really enjoyed the episode, and T'Challa made a decision as rulers so often do. And then we have this great end credit sequence. So, of course, he's listening to music because that's Peter Quill's favorite thing to do. He's a janitor. That's what his life is, or works at the Dairy Queen. So, at this point, we just think it's fast food. So he's cleaning up after hours, jamming to his tunes. And he's like, oh, sorry, we're closed. And he's like, even for your dear old dad? And his eyes light up because we know Ego's not a good guy. And then we see Ego's ship. I wonder if Mantis is inside. I hope so. And it's at a Dairy Queen. And that's just so well done. So well done. So what did you think? What did you think of the episode? How did you think they handled it? What did you think of Chadwick Boseman's performance? And what did you think, who were your other favorite performances? And what did you think of some of the remodeling of the characters? Share your, I would love to see this Nebula come over into this world. I think that would be great if they're gonna, I'm Captain Carter, but I would really strongly advocate for Nebula. I think she's great in both universes. It would be funny to see these two Nebulas interact. I think that our Nebula would really have her mind blown by seeing this one. All right, and be very upset about it. All right, so share your thoughts down below, subscribe today, and of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.